Welcome back to Singapore Property Talk Law. Are you ready to take a deep dive into Singapore's property market in 2024?
I know,
We're going to uncover the key trends that really defined 2024.
exactly. From those, record-breaking HDB resales
Totally.
all the way to, shifts in demand for certain areas.
Yeah, and really surprising shifts.
Absolutely.
So let me introduce our expert today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Serene.
Serene, welcome to the show.
Thrilled to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. I think this is going to be a really fascinating discussion.
I think so, too. It's going to be a lot to unpack. 2024
Oh, yeah.
was quite a year.
It was a roller coaster ride.
It was.
So why don't we just jump right in?
Let's do it.
Let's start with those $1 million HDB resales.
Yes.
I mean,
talk about it.
they were all over the headlines last year.
They were every.
And we're not talking about just a few.
Right.
2024 saw a record number of these transactions,
Record-breaking.
including one that was just jaw-dropping.
Oh, tell me about it.
$1.73 million for an HDB flat.
It makes you wonder.
It really makes you wonder.
What is fueling this phenomenon?
What is going on?
Yeah.
What is going on?
Well, it's really a fascinating mix of factors.
Okay.
On the one hand, HDB resale prices climbed a solid 9.6% throughout the year.
Wow.
Even in the last quarter, we saw a 2.5% jump.
So that's still an increase, even though we saw some cooling measures.
Exactly.
Back in August.
Right.
Like the reduced loan-to-value limit for HD loans.
Right.
Could this be a sign that maybe
Obviously.
those measures are starting to have an effect?
It's possible, right. It's a bit early to say for sure,
Yeah.
but it's definitely something to watch.
I would have thought
Yeah.
that those cooling measures would have really
Tamped things
you know,
down.
put the brakes on.
Yeah.
But it seems like demand is still
It's insatiable.
so strong.
It really is.
And in fact, despite those cooling measures,
Mhm.
the total number of HDB resale transactions actually went up
I know.
by 8% compared to 2023.
It's crazy.
So that just shows you
Yeah.
how strong the demand is.
It really highlights that persistent demand in the HDB market.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and talk about private property.
All right, let's do it.
Now, in contrast to the HDB market,
Uh-huh.
private property prices increased,
Yes.
but by a more moderate 3.9% in 2024.
Right, so a little bit of a slowdown compared to previous years.
Yeah, it seems like
Yeah.
things might be cooling off a bit.
Potentially. But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay, I'm right.
That overall figure kind of masks some really intriguing regional differences.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about the
Yes.
CCR,
Yes.
RCR, and OCR.
That's exactly.
So for our listeners who might not be familiar,
yeah.
the CCR is the prime district.
Prime districts, yes.
The RCR is the city fringe.
City fringe.
And the OCR covers the suburbs.
The suburbs, exactly.
So which region kind of stole the show this year?
Well, believe it or not, it was the RCR.
Really?
I know, surprising, right?
I am surprised.
It experienced the highest price growth at a whopping 6.2%.
Wow.
Yeah, so...
I would have thought it would have been the CCR as always.
Right, you would think so.
Yeah.
But the city fringe really outperformed expectations.
So what contributed to this strong performance in the city fringe?
Well, a couple of things.
Okay.
New launches played a significant role.
Okay.
Projects like Emerald of Katong in District 15 proved incredibly popular.
Oh, yeah.
And that really created a ripple effect throughout the entire RCR.
Okay.
Plus the OCR,
Right.
our suburban areas,
Huh.
experienced relative price stability,
Okay.
which might have pushed some buyers towards that city fringe.
Interesting. So the OCR kind of stayed stable.
Say it's stable.
And maybe people are looking for more.
Looking for a little bit more action.
Yeah.
A little bit more excitement.
So why was the OCR so stable?
That's a good question.
What do you think is driving that?
Well, it's worth noting that a higher proportion of buyers in the OCR are Singaporean citizens.
Oh, okay.
And if you remember those ABSD increases that targeted foreigners,
Right.
those likely had a bigger impact on the CCR.
Right. Which traditionally
Yes.
attracts more foreign investment.
Exactly.
So it seems like the OCR is kind of
Yeah.
holding its own.
It's holding steady,
Yeah.
potentially fueled by, that local demand.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how those
Uh-huh.
measures are affecting different segments.
Different segments of the market.
Okay. So we've covered HDBs. We've covered private apartments.
Yes.
What about landed properties?
Landed property.
Were those in high demand as well?
Well, demand for landed property remained pretty steady throughout 2024.
Okay.
Prices ended the year slightly up,
Okay.
despite a small dip in that final quarter.
All right.
So still a good year for landed
Up
property.
a little bit, but
But there is a twist.
there's always a twist.
Always a twist, right?
Got to keep things interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So detached homes saw an increase in sales volume,
Okay.
even as terrace and semi-detached home sales declined.
So people are going for the
They're going for the detached.
detached
home.
davantage.
Interesting.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, right?
Yeah, what's going on there?
Why are buyers favoring those detached homes over other landed property types?
Is it a privacy thing?
Could
More space?
maybe.
Maybe a lingering effect of the pandemic?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that deserves, further exploration.
Yeah, maybe our listeners can weigh in on that.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts.
Let us know in the comments.
Absolutely.
But let's move on to another interesting trend that we saw in 2024.
Okay, I like it.
And this is related to buyer behavior.
All right, buyer behavior, let's talk about it.
So specifically,
Younger buyers seem to be less fixated on things like lease decay
interesting.
and cash over valuation,
Covey.
or COV,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to older properties in prime locations.
Really? That's unexpected.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, those have always been,
Read your considerations.
yeah, especially with older properties.
Especially older properties, you're right.
So what do you think is driving this change in attitude?
Well, one theory is the great wealth transfer.
Okay.
So many younger buyers might be receiving financial support from their parents.
Okay, so they have a little bit more
A little bit more flexibility.
flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which could soften the impact of things like a high SOV.
Okay.
Another possibility is the hope of en bloc opportunities.
Right. So if an older property
Right.
in a prime location gets redeveloped,
Big payoff.
it could translate into a huge
Big windfall.
windfall.
Yeah.
So they're kind of
They're playing the long game?
playing the long game.
Yeah.
They're willing to overlook some of these downsides,
Potentially.
knowing that the potential payoff
Could be huge.
could be big.
Exactly.
But what if those en bloc hopes
Right.
don't pan out?
That's the gamble, right?
Is it a gamble worth taking?
It's a valid concern. There's always a risk involved.
Right.
But it seems like these younger buyers are really placing their bets on that long-term value
Okay.
of those prime locations.
So it's almost like
Yeah.
location
Location trumps all.
is trumping everything else.
Absolutely.
It seems so.
It's a fascinating
Yes,
shift.
it really is a shift in mindset.
All right, so
Well-
2024,
Uh-huh.
clearly a year full of surprises
Yeah.
in the property market.
Affluent.
But what does it all mean for the future?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is,
Unfortunately, there's no crystal ball to tell us for sure.
if only.
I know, right?
So what are expert forecasts saying for 2025?
Well, the forecasts are mixed.
Okay.
Some are predicting continued moderate growth,
Okay.
while others are saying we might see a slowdown.
Ah, all right. So
So it's really up in the air.
it could go either way.
It could go either way.
What should we be keeping an eye on?
Well, a couple of things.
Okay.
The upcoming election
Okay.
and, the government's stance on cooling measures
Right.
will definitely have an impact.
Yeah, for sure.
We also need to consider the global economic outlook.
Right.
If there's a downturn,
Uh-huh.
that could affect investor confidence
Uh-huh.
and lead to a more cautious market.
Okay.
So a lot of things to watch.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
We'll have to see
Exactly. We'll see how it all unfolds.
what happens.
Exactly. Hashtag ETS, the deep dive episode 2025-0110, part 2 of 3.
It sounds like 2025 is going to be another
Oh, yeah.
really interesting year
Definitely.
for Singapore property.
A lot to keep an eye on.
All right. So before we wrap up our deep dive into 2024's trends,
Yes.
let's recap some of the key takeaways.
We talked about that surprising dominance of the RCR.
Yeah, the city fringe, really.
I mean, who could have predicted that?
Right. Outshone all expectations.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And of course, we have to talk about those million-dollar HDB resales.
Of course, always a hot topic.
I mean, it's right.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, they really highlight
Yeah,
the strength of certain segments of the market.
for sure.
But it's important to remember
Yeah.
that they don't necessarily reflect the entire HDB landscape.
Right. Not every HDB flat is going for $1 million.
Exactly. Exactly.
And let's not forget the evolving priorities of younger buyers.
Yes, that's a key takeaway for sure.
They seem to be less concerned about lease decay and COV.
Right.
And more open to older properties and mixed-use developments.
Yeah, they're not afraid of a little bit of,
A little fixer-upper.
a little character, a little history.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're thinking about buying or selling property in Singapore.
Uh,
These trends
could really impact your decisions.
absolutely. And it really reinforces the importance of staying informed,
Yeah.
doing your research
Definitely.
before you make any big moves.
So, solid advice.
Thank you.
Now, before we wrap up completely,
Yes.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
We've seen integrated developments gaining popularity in other parts of the world, particularly in the U.S.
Okay.
These massive complexes that combine residential, commercial, and retail spaces all in one row.
Right. Everything all in one place.
So how might this trend influence the future of Singapore's malls and residential offerings?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, could this be the future of Singapore's property landscape?
It's definitely possible. I mean, it could potentially blur the lines between where we live, work, and play.
Right.
We might start to see these self-contained communities within these developments,
Okay.
offering a whole new level of convenience and lifestyle.
So picture this.
Okay.
You wake up in your condo, grab a coffee from the cafe downstairs,
Nice.
head to your office in the same building,
Convenient.
hit the gym after work,
Stay active.
and then have dinner at a restaurant, all without leaving the complex.
I love it, the ultimate inconvenience.
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe we could see a revitalization of older malls,
Interesting.
transforming them into these vibrant mixed-use hubs
Okay, I like it.
that cater to a wider range of needs.
Yeah, so not just shops and restaurants,
Okay.
but also apartments, co-working spaces, childcare facilities.
So think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Living above your favorite bookstore
Oh, that's dangerous.
or having a grocery store.
Right.
Just an elevator right away.
I mean,
No more battling traffic or searching for parking.
buddy up.
It would be all
Mhm.
about convenience
Convenient and community.
and community.
Exactly.
But of course,
yeah,
there are potential downsides
of course there always are.
to consider as well.
Right.
I mean, these mega developments could lead to increased density
Yeah.
and traffic congestion in certain areas.
That's a valid concern.
And what about affordability?
Right.
Could these integrated developments
Uh-huh.
become exclusive enclaves for the wealthy?
Yeah, and potentially further exacerbate
Right.
existing inequalities.
So it's crucial
It is.
to carefully plan and manage
Absolutely.
the development of these integrated spaces.
We need to make sure they
Right.
benefit the wider community.
Yeah.
And don't create,
New
Well-
problem.
new problems. Exactly.
So it's a balancing act.
It is. It is.
But it's definitely a trend worth watching
oh, absolutely.
as we move into the future of Singapore's property market.
Definitely something to keep our eye on. Hashtag TTS, the deep dive, episode 2025-0110, part 3 of 3.
It really is something to think about.
It is.
And, as we've seen, 2024 was full of surprises.
It was.
Who knows what 2025 has in store for us?
Exactly. We'll have to wait and see.
But before we say goodbye,
Yes.
let's do like a super quick recap
Okay.
of what really stood out
All right, let's do it.
to you this past year in the property market.
Well, for me, the RCR's performance was a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
The city fringe really came into its own.
Yeah, it surpassed even the prime districts
I know, it's amazing.
in terms of price growth.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that momentum continues into 2025.
It will.
Yeah.
And speaking of defying expectations,
Yes,
we have to talk about
of course.
those $1 million HDB resales.
Always a hot topic.
It seems like every other week a new record was being set.
They really captured the public's imagination, didn't they?
They did.
And while, those high-priced transactions
Yeah.
represent a specific segment of the market,
Yeah,
they do highlight the overall strength
Yeah.
of the HDB resale market.
for sure.
Yeah,
And we can't forget about
right.
the changing dynamics of the market,
Yeah,
especially with younger buyers.
those millennials, Gen Z,
Yeah.
they're shaking things up.
They're approaching property with a totally different mindset.
They are.
Less fixated on lease decay,
Right.
sui revi,
Mm-hmm.
and more open to the potential of older properties and mixed-use developments.
Yeah, they're not afraid of a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of, a project.
Right. So I think the big takeaway here
Yeah,
for our listeners
for sure.
is that,
Yeah.
whether you're a seasoned investor
Huh?
or a first-time buyer,
Right.
these trends really highlight the importance
Absolutely.
of staying informed
Yeah.
and adapting
Right.
to the ever-changing landscape
It's a dynamic market.
of Singapore's property market.
It is. It keeps us on our toes.
It does.
Wow.
So do your research,
Yes.
understand your needs
And goals.
and goals,
Yeah.
and don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Absolutely. You never know what opportunities might be out there.
You don't.
Right.
All right, Serene.
Yes.
It's been so fascinating having you on the show
Thank you so much for having me.
and picking your brain about all of these 2024 trends.
No, it's been a pleasure.
So, to our listeners,
Yes.
thank you for joining us on Singapore Property Talk Law
Yes. Thank you for tuning in.
for this deep dive into the 2024 property trends.
Yeah.
Until next time,
See you next time.
happy investing.